Alright, I decided to make a small podcast or webcast series where I just talk without a script about certain things. Maybe in the future I'll have a script, maybe in the future I won't, but most of the topics on this sort of casual podcast are just going to be about aspects of my childhood, growing up in an abusive household and dealing with some stuff. I figured it would be better to record out some of the questions that friends have had in the past, because if I can just link them something that they can watch, I don't have to re-traumatize myself by explaining the same story. So, without further ado, this is the video that details everything we know and everything we don't know about Spot as of March 2020. So, a little background is that I had Spot as a toddler, and the story changes, and we're gonna get to that later. Now, I was somewhat of a precocious boy, and as a result, I do remember quite a fair amount of my early childhood memories, more than I would say the average person. I have much more difficulty remembering things currently than I did back then. For instance, I still know my childhood addresses, I still know my childhood phone numbers, I still know my username and password for the school computer system. But if you asked me what my address or my phone number was that I currently have, I would not be able to tell you because I can't remember things like that anymore. So, for whatever reason, my memory was better back then, and I have a lot of memories from back then, and I evidently have a lot of repressed ones too because they can be dug back up. So, basically, what I'm getting at is that I do remember Spot. And whilst my memories are agonizingly hazy to the point that I rely on people telling me more information in order to have more information, I still can get a sense of what was right, what wasn't right, and what my life was like back then. Now, both me and Spot were neglected and abused in the household, which I do remember. My mother was working full time, and as a result, I was left alone and was at the mercy of my father, as was Spot. Me and Spot were neglected and physically abused, and generally it was done as a punishment because we were causing some sort of disruption. You can imagine a 4-year-old and a puppy that are being ignored and neglected and not being given food or attention generally aren't going to behave the best. And I remember Spot having things done, like having the muzzle taped shut and being locked outside and being hit and being deprived of food and water. And I also remember myself being hit and locked up and stuff like that. So this is where the story changes, because based on who you talk to and at what time you talk to them, they'll tell you something different. My birth father mocked me with the fact that Spot was dead. And this I often relate to a incident that I do remember that is heavily repressed, in which Spot attacked him after he was beating on me and her. She bit him. And this is something my mom refuses to talk about. And this is something that there's virtually no information about. The only thing I really have is I remember the altercation that led up to it. And that was yeah. I also remember Spot being repeatedly punished for behaving like a normal puppy, like digging and chewing, and the neighbors were often very mad because Spot was just locked outside for long periods of time and just made a mess of things. Now, where the story complicates is, of course, my dad said Spot was killed. But Mom says Spot wasn't killed. And here's the thing about my mom. She is a manipulative liar who likes to lie, especially if she thinks it'll be an easier thing for somebody to deal with than what the truth is. Lying for your protection is pretty much her mantra. And for every single one of my dogs, she has lied to supposedly protect me. And generally speaking, this happens when the dog dies. So the fact that my mom is so eager to give a different story, whilst it might seem comforting, it isn't, because she's not a reliable source of information. Now, the year that this went down changes. Once again, it's based on what Mom says. She'll either say 1998 or 1999. The photos, similarly, are just as inconclusive. They'll have 1998 and 1999 written on them. And if that's the case, there's no way that Spot could have stayed that small, stayed that young, for 2 years. The one photo I have is supposedly from June of 1998. The other one, it's labeled both 1998 December and 1999 December, and she uses the excuse that it was developed in 1999, but the photo was taken in 1998. But still, June to December, you'd think that a puppy would be bigger than that. So that proposes the question, is the first photo even Spot? Because I can't tell if it is, like, for all I know, that photo could have been taken visiting a friend or a neighbor. But the photos from December, I know they're legit. Because there's photos, in the photo, there's things that were around the house, like entertainment. You know what I mean? Like the home entertainment system, that's the word. And certain chairs and certain toys. And the carpet, I remember the carpet. So it's not like those photos were not of a house we were living in, because I remember the stuff that's in the photos, so that had to be Spot. But of course, the fact that there's the gap between the June photo and the December photos, many of my friends have proposed that there were either two Spots, or that the first picture was not actually of Spot. I am very uncomfortable at the thought that there might have been two Spots, because there'd be really no way for me to tell, and as my mother lies to supposedly protect me, that could easily be something that she had done, because, I mean, if only one of my dogs had something bad happen to them, it's better than having two of them, or, I guess, it's a mess. The breed that my mom said Spot was also is brought under question. She claimed American Cocker Spaniel. However, Spot in the photos from December appears to be a Springer Spaniel, or in the very least, an English Cocker Spaniel. But the photos from the photo, there's just one from June, appears like they could be a American Cocker Spaniel. You could say that perhaps she doesn't remember correctly, or she was just giving a breed that she thought Spot was, or her memory's going. But Mom has a history of lying, and that makes it very hard with her memories. I don't know if she's telling the truth, if she's intentionally lying, or if she's forgotten something, which makes this situation incredibly frustrating. So, what ended up transpiring is Spot was being neglected, Spot was being abused. According to my birth father, Spot attacked him, which I say is in self-defense, and she was euthanized. According to the first story my mother told me, Spot was taken to live on a farm, or taken by another family, or adopted by somebody else. We gave Spot away, essentially. But she only stuck with that story for one phone call, because the next time I talked to her, she told me that the SPCA seized Spot, took her from our house because of the neglect, because of the abuse. Now, of course, which one's a lie? She's been caught in the act, You can't say that you gave the dog away to somebody else and then say the SPCA seized them, okay? It's one of two, you know what I mean? Honestly, that really puts what she's saying into question, because, she's changing her story. She also alternates between what year it happened, whether it be 1998 or 1999. So, yeah, it is up for debate, and how much of what she says can be trusted is on the table. We don't really know. But I'd like to point out that She has lied about every single one of my dogs who has died. When Jack died, she lied and said that he was alive for a year and a half. When Zippy died, she lied and said that she was still alive for over a year. In both these situations, she decided that lying to me and then never telling me until accidentally slipping up was better than actually telling me the truth. So the prospects aren't looking too good with how much of what she says about Spot can really be believed. I feel that Spot being taken by the SPCA is a best case scenario, considering what I know happened. And I would hope that that would be true, but I have no evidence or reason to believe that it is, especially because the SPCA in British Columbia was notoriously bad and would frequently allow dogs to just remain neglected in people's yards, up until there was this big incident with sled dogs, where a whole bunch of sled dogs were abused. Only then did the BC SPCA finally get their act together, which happened long after Spot. Whilst a happy ending where the neighbors reported what was going on and Spot got seized would be the best case scenario, it doesn't seem likely, especially because there was also a 4-year-old boy being physically and emotionally neglected and abused in that house as well, but CPS didn't get involved. I mean, you'd think that if the neighbors reported what was happening to the dog, they would have also reported what was happening to the kid. So, at that point, the story doesn't add up. And the fact that Mom's dates keep changing and her stories they keep changing, it just really feels like it's, the point I'm trying to make, though, is what do I remember about Spot? Well, let's look at what we know is true. Spot is a little black and white puppy with floppy ears, long fluffy fur, an intact tail with a white tip, speckles on the nose and toes, and a patterning of splotchy spots on the back. Spot had brown eyes, and based on one of the clearer photos, you can tell that Spot was most likely a girl. We also know that Spot had a little blue collar and had a little yellow and orange tennis ball, and, well, Spot looks like a Springer Spaniel. And that's mostly what we know. And unfortunately, it's not a lot to go off of. We do have the pictures, though, and that is good. We know that at the very least the December photos are genuine. Those are Spot. We know that. I do have memories that are a lot weaker because, of course, I'm so young. These include Spot having a squeaky pork chop toy, and I know that this was Spot's and not one of the other dogs, just because the other dogs didn't like toys that were that big and made out of plastic. I also remember Spot having a chew rope, like a pull rope toy, and I believe it was white and green and gray and blue in colors. So the threads were like in like a bluish grayish colors set of colors. Kind of reminded me of dental floss, if I remember it. I do believe that many of the toys that Spot would have had, many of the things that were for Spot, were kept as we moved to the last childhood house. So, for all I know, they could still be in my stuff that is at the storage locker over there. And I'm hoping that it is. Unfortunately, the circumstances of when I had to load the stuff into the storage locker were a very stressful and traumatic experience, so I don't remember what I found in there. Unfortunately. As I stated before, I do know that Spot was abused and Spot was neglected. I don't even have to have the story about the neighbors getting mad to know that, because I remember that. I remember Spot getting in trouble for chewing on things, and Spot getting in trouble for crying at night, and all this stuff. But Spot was a good dog, okay? Spot was wonderful. And no matter what anybody says, Spot was not aggressive towards me, okay? I think that was like an argument my father tried to use, was that Spot was unfit for me. But in reality, she just attacked him for being a shitty person. Yeah. That's all I know, really. Had Spot either in 98 or 99. I was over 3, under 5. Spot was most likely a Springer Spaniel. We have the photos that shows how Spot looks. And we could see that Spot had a little tennis ball and a little food dish and a little blue collar. And, maybe we should think about best case scenario. But, I don't like being lied to, even if it's supposedly to protect me. And I'm certain that when I start dealing with my trauma more professionally, like using like professional therapy and stuff, I'm almost positive that I'll start having more access to traumatic repressed memories. And I think based on what I'm able to remember that I was correct. I'd love to be proven wrong, but there's no evidence that can actually prove that Spot was taken away. And it is legal to euthanize a healthy dog. People did it all the time, especially if they lied and said the dog was aggressive. And, if my mom's willing to lie about all my other dogs, about when they died and how they died, then what's to stop her from doing the exact same thing, you know what I mean? In fact, the only reason why she's even talking about Spot in the first place is because she was at that point lying about my last dog, Zippy, being dead. So she, feeling guilt because she didn't want to tell me the truth about Zippy, was willing to talk about Spot, which I think speaks volumes about how this dynamic between me and her works. She doesn't respect me. I'm her son, but she, treats me like I'm some, I don't know. The point, I think, that I'm trying to get at is, lots of bad stuff happened to me and Spot, but Spot made my life infinitely better. And the reason why I want to know as much as I possibly can about Spot is, well, I believe that we live on in the memories of others, and the memories of our loved ones, and that in order to keep Spot around, we need to remember everything, and I basically want all the information that there possibly could be. Not just, to know it, but because I found comfort in Spot. Red Spot was based on Spot, When I wasn't allowed to talk about Spot anymore, I created Red Spot. So, yeah, that is the Spot story, as much as I know. So, there we have it. If there's more info, if there's more updates, I'll be sure to let you guys know.